Well, welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show, where we rip the lid off the stories that matter and ask the questions no one else dares. Today, it's a political explosion you won't believe. Catherine Blaiklock, who's been on the show a couple of times, she's the founder of the Brexit Party, in case there's any doubt about that. She's just dropped a bombshell. She's filed a police complaint against Nigel Farage and a couple of others with the Metropolitan Police. This is backed by 29 documents, she says, proves he's a fraud. It's got everything: suspect money, broken trust, and a party in chaos. Catherine Blaiklock names three people, including Nigel, pointing about fraud, breach of trust, dodgy paperwork, and relentless bullying. Is this the takedown reform UK's been dreading, or a bitter ex-founders settling scores? Catherine, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
You've said you've handed the Met Police 29 documents, emails, legal advice, the works, claiming Nigel committed fraudulent breach of trust, fake company house filings, and bullied you into giving up your shares. What are the key pieces of evidence which support your claims?
Okay, well, just can I start by saying that the Met Police haven't been very helpful at all. And it started immediately when I had a 30-minute conversation with them and they went off to take advice and they were logging the call and said they were going to give me a reference. I said, don't worry, send me. They said, send a text, and I never got the text. And then I have now received another email saying that I have to go to Action Fraud. Now, Action Fraud is an organization that is to stop people knowing how much fraud there is. And I actually had dealings with Action Fraud some time ago in relation to a Nepalese charity, healthcare charity I was running, when people were impersonating our name and collecting money. And I had the evidence and took it to Action Fraud, and absolutely nothing happened. So now I have to do another application, and I'm going to submit all the documents in Norfolk so that I get a less unhelpful response.
And you say you've got to go all the way to Norfolk. Why Norfolk?
So I'm in Norfolk at this second.
All right, okay. So let's have a look then at and we've unpacked this. You've been a guest a couple of times on the show, and you originally approached me after my chat with Martin J, who knew Nigel from the EU days. What made you approach me in the first place?
Well, I was just getting really infuriated about what Reform were doing, and it's an extraordinary operation in messaging, of which Nigel is an art, is a fine master of it. There's no doubt. And if things progress the way they are, then Nigel Farage will deliver us the first Muslim Prime Minister.
And so that was the sort of catalyst for that sort of stuff. And it's interesting because we've had a few people come out painting a different picture of Nigel. We've had Ben Habib on the show, as you know. Also, to add balance, we've had Charlie Mullins and also Anne Widdecombe with their own perspective on Nigel and Reform as a party. And also James Well. I was with James Well show last night. I want to take us back to the beginning because a lot of this focuses on the structure of the Brexit Party. And looking at Companies House, and just to put this in perspective, Brexit Party Limited was incorporated on the 23rd of November 2018, with you as the sole shareholder. Nigel Paul Farage was appointed as a director on the 29th of March 2019, and your termination of appointment as a director was on the 3rd of May 2019. What led to that termination?
Okay, well, the Companies House record does not show everything because it doesn't show that Nigel had been appointed as a director earlier and had to be removed.
Why did he have to be removed?
He had to be removed because I took counsel barrister's advice that he had been basically, I had papers shoved at me at a hotel in London by somebody who had had 3 large glasses of wine with no minutes to sign this paperwork. This paperwork was in contradiction to the company structure. So you've got the party, and you've got the company, and you've got not the structure of the party, but the memorandum. The memorandum says that you could not be a director without being a shareholder. So that appointment in March is not valid
Right.
because he was not a shareholder in March.
Yeah, so the according to Companies House, it says the 29th of March 2019. It's still up there, has him being appointed as director. Are you saying that that appointment was not valid?
Correct.
Okay. So what was done to rectify
Irregularities all the way through. And there's a 20-page document from a barrister that I called in, excuse me, and that was over Easter 2019, which was in April. So I know the timeline without worrying about it, but that was an incorrect appointment at that point.
yeah, so to clarify then, why wasn't Companies House records? Why were they not corrected?
I don't know.
Okay. So are you saying that because there doesn't seem to be any other suggestion of a reappointment or a valid appointment other than that particular one, are you saying that at the moment his appointment as a director is
No,
invalid?
I'm not saying that, but because that company is now Reform, and that now has become, it doesn't, the shares have all been passed to Reform 2025. So he's now a direct or person of significant control in Reform 2025.
Right. So, but basically, all that was, well, there's a change of name which took place on the 18th of May 2021, according to the change of name notice, to the Reform UK Party Limited. Why was there that change of name?
I've no idea. They wanted it.
Okay. And was that basically possibly to distance themselves from you?
I think it could have been, and also because they considered that Brexit was done, I suppose, but it wasn't. Um, there, even somebody with a little bit of understanding of Companies House will be able to immediately look at that record and know that there are some problems with that record on Companies House.
Okay, so certainly, I mean, it's a public document. People can search the company register themselves, and the suggestion, which I've heard in some of the interviews been giving, that basically you didn't set up the Brexit Party. That's clearly incorrect because it was incorporated in your you were the sole director, sole shareholder at the date of incorporation.
I bought it before Nigel left UKIP. I bought it during the Henry Bolton era, along with other names.
Well,
But the biggest issue I have about the problem is you will see the division of when I gave the share to the trust, which I think happened in the February, and then that trust disappears.
yes, and you said that you set up the Brexit Party as a not-for-profit trust,
Well,
but
that was
after you left, that trust vanished and it flipped to a for-profit under Nigel Farage.
flipped back to a for-profit.
Flip back to that side. You've got the trust document with your solicitors, as I understand it. How did Nigel pull that off, and what do you claim he's done with the cash since?
I can't make any comments about the cash. Only that the Financial Times did an article in June 2024, just before the last election, saying that there was a £7 million black hole in those Brexit Party accounts.
Okay.
What was you made 2 points in that question. What was the
Yeah,
first
well,
point?
no, the other one is how if basically pull it off. You've got the trust document with your solicitors, and again, there are questions regarding that trust document. How did Nigel pull that off then? If the trust vanished and you say it flipped back to a for-profit under Nigel?
How they managed it. I bought it as a for-profit, not because I wanted it as a for-profit, but because it's a very cheap way of buying companies. And they cost literally like £10. So I was
Yeah,
actually,
it's next to nothing, and the shareholding, the capital was originally a pound, wasn't it?
yeah, I was buying names rather than companies. That has now changed. So they're fairly equal, the two structures. The alternative way which not everybody thought was the best way, except for one person who was Nigel's behind the scene lawyer, wanted to, including Richard Tice, to his credit, wanted to simply buy another not-for-profit company and swap the numbers, swap the name over onto the new number. Nigel's lawyer was the only person out of 20 people I asked who wanted it done a different way. Because if I had done it that way, it would have remained a not-for-profit forever. You can't then rejig it, certainly in the public eye, back to a for-profit. One person wanted it done a different way. One person who is extremely clever. And I can't comment exactly, but it's very interesting who that one person was and what that meant, because you can get rid of a trust document, but there's no record showing when they got rid of it. And Private Eye have investigated twice. And the last treasurer said it wasn't executed properly.
And you're saying that it was?
Well, it was executed by a solicitors in Norwich. It wasn't executed in my back garden. It was executed. And you can see the in part of the execution on Companies House.
Yeah.
You can't see the out part.
Yes, and you do raise an interesting question, because with the change of name, the change of directors, the change of shareholding and everything, why didn't they start from scratch?
Well, they still haven't started again from scratch, because Reform 2025 has taken the number the shares of the Reform Brexit Party. Why not? I imagine for convenience. It's quite difficult because obviously they're a political party and there's money. So whether they could literally just transfer that money to a new company, or whether they'd have to give back all that money and then start again.
Yeah.
I can see why they wouldn't start again.
Yeah, and I think, as for the point of clarity, as I say, my only mistress in all of this is the truth, and I think it's very helpful having you on the show. We try to make sure different views are expressed, but certainly there are questions to be asked, and those answers to be questioned. Now, obviously, this gets personal as well. You're alleging what you call relentless emotional harassment. You quote an example of a 5:20 a.m. text from Nigel himself, pressuring you to hand over your shares in April 2019. Paint the picture for me, Catherine. What happened? What did he say? And how did it break you down?
Well, this went on for about 30 days. And I knew on April the 1st that there was a major problem. And I knew it was April the 1st because every year my daughter plays a horrible April Fool's joke. So
Isn't it also your birthday on April the 1st?
no, but yes, but it's always, we have these unbelievable schemes and they're so convincing.
Oh, yeah. What does she normally do? Tell me about that.
This year, she sent me a video of a car pileup and she takes the motorway to work.
Oh, dear.
With all the detail of her friend getting injured with the airbag and having a problem with her shoulder and having to
Oh,
go.
good heavens. Well, I'm glad. Did you realize it was a joke?
Well, no, I mean, I started saying, "Are you okay? Have you got insurance policy, etc." And then she said, "Yeah." And have you got the police there? And what's happened? Well, I've got a big dent in the car and whatever. And then I said, "Well, what's the insurance detail?" And she said, "It's Miss Falls."
Oh, well, brilliant. Well, it's great you have a sense of humour in amongst this sort of, the light and shade is so important. And it is, I mean, the press wrongly report your birthday as being April the 1st. It is in April, though. When is your birthday?
Do they report it's April the 1st?
Oh, yeah, I've seen it in the press. Absolutely. When's your, I know it's in April.
It's April the 22nd.
Ah, right. So coming up.
And I'm
Okay.
hoping April the 22nd, which is the Tuesday after Easter, that will be the day when we will get Rupert Lowe to come to Runcorn.
Right.
Do
Okay.
an action day.
Yeah, so you knew it was April the 1st because, as you say, your daughter plays all these pranks on you. So talk me through what happened on April the 1st.
I was in the bank, and we already had two bank accounts, but I was in the bank with two people. One who has passed away, Mick McGough, who I thought was a decent guy. He was a treasurer at the beginning, and he was a treasurer at the beginning, and he had been a treasurer in UKIP, and he was a Essex accountant. He knew his stuff in terms of how to do accounts. I always looked at him as an honest person. So I appointed him, and then we had this guy called another guy. I will leave his name out at the moment. And but effectively, I was the signatory, and I was the person dealing with this, and those two people were helping, and they had to rush off from the bank to a lunch. And at that lunch, that boys' lunch, which I would imagine was probably at Boysdale's, which is Nigel's favourite place, was Posh George and Tice and the lawyer and those two and Dan Jukes. So 6 men went to lunch and I wasn't invited. Get the picture? And
And there's been this pattern of exclusion, as you say.
that was the first time I knew, because I complained about it on the way home. I was extremely upset, but I knew something that day. And so it started carrying on and on and on. There were awful things that went on that were so upsetting, like checking how much money I'd moved out of the PayPal account as though I was a fraudster or a criminal, these sort of text messages. And it carried on. When they started to want my shares, it got so bad that I called my own solicitor. I mean, so I'm calling a private solicitor in Norfolk against my own party. And it got so bad that she told me not to pick the phone up, and was advising me. That's when we called in the barrister as well. I have emails from that period where one of them has said I should call the police on this at the setting up. There's another email. This is another email to my solicitor saying, surely this is fraud. This is what has happened overnight on the company's house record. Another email talking about I'm getting another call come in from this lawyer whilst I'm writing this email. It was continuous.
And all of this, what you're saying, it was emotional pressure, relentless emotional harassment is what you've called it.
And the point where you don't know what to do, which is why I had to go to law to get, and even that wasn't really helpful because the UKIP people wouldn't help me, and the Brexit Party people were this little cabal, and the business people. This doesn't happen in business. I mean, in business, you wouldn't, if you owned half a company and a pile of money in business, you're not just going to leave it, are you? You're going to fight for it, say, well, we're going to negotiate how much the buyout is. So we were in this cross point between it being a political party and it being a business. I mean, I could have said to them, of course, in retrospect, right, okay, you want my shares, 400,000.
So why didn't you? I mean, and so looking at that, and you're absolutely right. That's how you do the normal transfer. You say, well, if somebody wants to buy the company or buy you out, you have a negotiation. What was the deal, and what was the turning point for you?
Well, I didn't do this for money. Never. I did 6 months' work for no money. It's never being in politics has cost me very dearly. I gave money to UKIP. I've given time. I've given energy. I still do. It's a relentless, soulless task. So it never crossed my mind that these shares had value because it's a political party. Shares in political parties should not have value. I mean, if I had taken 400,000 for those shares, I think I'd be the villain.
So what? I mean, so let's look at that. They're obviously a turning point. You paint a picture of all this harassment, how you were effectively left out of what sounded like a boys' club. You didn't go to meetings. You didn't go for lunches. You were left at the bus stop outside in the rain. All the things that we've spoken about beforehand. What was the turning point for you where you suddenly said, "Okay, enough is enough. I'm going to transfer this share"?
It was Nigel wrote me a letter.
And what did that letter say?
I have published that letter. That letter basically said, "You'll destroy Brexit, and you can have the Great Yarmouth seat, and you wouldn't want to be considered the person who destroyed Brexit." It's very manipulative because other people said previously, and at that point, I know a lot more people who could have come with me. See, the point as well was the people I'm dealing with legally are not political people. I needed a political lawyer, not a civil lawyer. And there's a difference. And there's very few people who are lawyers in politics because this is about what's going to happen. You have to remember, we hadn't had the European elections. We were in the, nothing had happened. So we were in the May era, and that's why it was important to do the right thing. And I trusted Nigel, and at the end of the day, it was a combination of persuasion, threat, and bribery.
Right. Persuasion, threat, and bribery. And the bribery was the seat, was it?
Well, that's the yes, and I mean even that, of course, was reneged on instantly. And of course, it's ironic that it's the Great Yarmouth seat. So that's and you've had a month of this, and you don't know what to do. I mean, I did not know what to do. It was as simple as that. I know what I would do now,
What would
but
you do now?
well, I would go with what I would call a political lawyer and say, right, we are where we are. I've given this as a trust. I am in the position that Zio Youssef is in, but it was effectively, and I'm going to oversee this. I don't need to stand as an MEP if you don't want me to, but I'm going to oversee this. I'm going to make sure this is done properly, and you're going to have to work with me because you are just going to have to, and. And we will set up a proper board of oversight. And that was another thing they didn't do. So they didn't set up a board. They didn't have minutes. They didn't have meetings. See, they would minute afterwards. I think they will probably have created a file of minutes. They can, but I never signed them. So there's not a single minute that I signed in that entire period, including that of the directorship of Nigel Farage.
Okay. And so those sort of procedures which you would normally have to follow in a company thing, you're saying just never happened.
Oh, no, there's a problem as well because I'm implicated in this. I mean, I am supposed to be doing this with people who aren't doing it. By this point, I'm a 50% shareholder. So, you're really stuck with this because you yourself know what should be done, but it isn't being done. And you're also a director. So I have director responsibilities. So I can self-implicate myself too.
Yes.
Get the
And
picture. And there's also the political stuff because, there were, when you're working on our side of the political spectrum, then you're already getting threats and unpleasant things happening. And now you're starting to get it from the other side as well.
so what sort of threats? We talk about threats, and it's been a pattern in our
It's
conversations.
like
What
anonymous text messages. Text
lots of text messages.
well, the text message I particularly remember was a text message that said, "You do know." This is when I owned all the shares. You do know that Nigel spent £500,000 at one afternoon in UKIP, money they didn't have.
And what was that money spent on, apparently, allegedly?
spent on cars, advertising boards, and cards for an election. But the point is that there was that. I don't think it was that amount, but there were financial concerns because I'm liable for this stuff. I'm a director. I'm liable for the company for what I mean. I have limited guarantee, but I'm still a director. So it was uncomfortable, very difficult.
So, so just looking at the financial side, I mean, you've come out in agreement with Rupert Lowe, fresh off his KC report, slamming what he classifies reform's vile investigation. I think that's the word which is used into him. Rupert basically says Farage must never be PM. His report says Farage is unfit to govern. You go further than that, though. You say he's a criminal.
I haven't said he's a criminal. I've said that there are actions that are criminal. Yes.
But
In
somebody
terms,
has to do those actions. Who's done those actions?
okay, I'm saying that what they did to me was criminal. Yes.
Right. But criminal in terms of the law of it or bad behavior. You
So in
think
terms of you cannot put pressure on a director like that. It's simple as that, or a shareholder.
right.
You cannot bully a single person against a great pile of you. It's that simple.
So
Yes,
it
I mean,
and again, it's looking like it's very, as you say, a very serious accusation. You've said that if it's incorrect, Nigel will sue. Well, the best defence for any defamation is that if it's true. You've got all the documents, as you say, to support your allegations. Just let's be absolutely clear on what you say is the criminal side. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you say, the actions which are tantamount to criminality. You're saying the harassment and the pressure to sell your shares.
I
Are you
haven't.
also saying there was financial irregularity that is also criminal?
No, I'm not saying there's financial irregularity. I'm saying very clearly, number one, I am absolutely not a weeping wallflower. Okay, and anybody who's worked with me knows that I'm not a weeping wallflower. In fact, if anything, I would be considered too aggressive. I am not somebody who gives up. I'm not somebody who takes things lying down, and I'm not somebody who gets pushed over. And to get me to break me down to the point where I ended up having to seek treatment in the Priory suggests that something was done to me, and it was very, very unpleasant what was going on. And I should not be in a position where my solicitor says, do not pick the phone up anymore.
So clearly, and
Right. Number
you've
two
yeah.
is that we know, as we've just talked about, the documentation was completely irregular. And that's documented. And number three, there was a trust document that was set up that disappeared. It doesn't say that thereafter there is financial irregularity, but the trust document changed the profit structure of the company. That's what it says. It doesn't say what thereafter. And there's no paper trail that's ever been recovered after I left the company as what happened.
So it's that irregularity, it's that failure to follow the due process that you'll say needs to be investigated and potential criminality.
Yes, and it's where the barrier of this. There's two things: is where the line is on the bullying and the exclusion, um, the on that type of thing, and then separately is the issue of what happened to that trust document.
And just for this, we'll finish on this bit and then come back to unpack further. But what do you think happened to the trust document?
I think it got made into a paper aeroplane and thrown in the bin
And why would that be?
because it changes it back to a company by share.
Okay. For now, Catherine, thank you very much for joining us. We will be back to unpack this further. Thank you very much.
Thank you.